So I previously speculated that the Democratic Party establishment, in their attempt to ostensibly embrace Bernie Sanders, well, they're actually just exploiting him for his popularity in actuality. Now, there are two stories that were released back to back that actually really demonstrate this point further. So, there was one story where the Democratic establishment convened a meeting with Bernie Sanders and they basically tried to silence him. They said, Bernie, you are doing some damage to the party. You need to stop criticizing us. But now, on another hand, there's a story where the same corporate Democrats who tried to silence Bernie Sanders are basically telling him, you know what, shut up, Bernie Sanders, until we need you. And right now we need you because there are constituents in town halls across the country that are berating us. We're being lambasted by our own constituents because they're frustrated that we're willing to cave to Donald Trump. Bernie, will you please let them know who the real enemy is? It's Trump, it's not us. So I think that these stories demonstrate that the Democratic Party establishment, they're just a bunch of bullies. So when it comes to them trying to silence Bernie, The Hill explains Senator Chuck Schumer is trying to keep the peace in the Senate Democratic caucus as Senator Bernie Sanders' aggressive effort to push the party left is giving some colleagues heartburn. The Senate Minority Leader convened a meeting last month between Sanders, a liberal stalwart, and a group of Democrats Sanders criticized for voting against an amendment he co-wrote to lower the cost of prescription drugs by allowing their importation from Canada. He said it was disappointing that 13 Senate Democrats didn't stand up to powerful special interests like the pharmaceutical industry. You cannot do that if you're in the leadership, said one senator who did not approve of Sanders' tactics and requested anonymity to speak frankly. Sanders told colleagues at the meeting that he did not intend to inflict any political damage, but declined to apologize for his policy positions, according to a source familiar with the meeting. Democratic sources say Schumer convened the meeting to send a message to the Vermont senator. Play nice with others. Schumer was careful not to create the impression that Democrats were ganging up on Sanders. He invited fellow liberal Senator Jeff Merkley to sit in on the session, even though Merkley really had no part in the tiff. Now, I know that Chuck Schumer doesn't want this meeting to seem as though they're trying to gang up on Bernie Sanders, but that's exactly what they're trying to do. They want to do shitty things that harm the American people, yet they don't want to be called out on it. They don't like that Bernie Sanders is the one individual that's liberal, that's willing to criticize the Democratic Party. They want to be able to do terrible corporatist neoliberal things that benefit the pharmaceutical industry, and they want to be able to get away with it. And now there's a specific reason why they don't want Bernie Sanders to criticize them. It's because Bernie Sanders has a large platform with millions of progressives following him. So when Bernie Sanders criticizes these corporatist Democrats for voting with the pharmaceutical industry because of their own actions, they're getting called out, and now they want Bernie Sanders to come to their rescue. So according to the Washington Post, senior Democratic lawmakers on Tuesday sought to stave off town hall protests from their own party, asking Senator Bernie Sanders to reach out and urge activists to redirect their anger at Republicans instead of at moderate Democratic lawmakers. The request came in a weekly meeting of top Democratic senators, according to a senator in attendance. Over the past 2 weeks, crowds and conflict-hungry media crews have swarmed town halls and protested at congressional offices. Republicans have gotten the brunt of it, with several members escorted by police through lines of shouting protesters and some caught scrapping or rescheduling public events or leaving out back doors to dodge angry activists. But protesters have also gathered in blue states, marching to Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer's home in Brooklyn to demand the obstruction of Trump nominees and showing up at the offices of safe seat Democrats to demand that they filibuster Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Neil Gorsuch. Such episodes spurred Democrats to ask Sanders for help, according to Senator Joe Manchin, who attended the meeting on Tuesday. They basically explained to Bernie, it looks like you could be the person that could calm down and make sure their energy and all this enthusiasm is directed in all the right, proper channels, Manchin said. Bernie has a voice, and if protesters want to be active, then direct them where the problem may be or where they anticipate a problem. Manchin insisted on Tuesday that the Democratic caucus is unified in not wanting to repeal the Affordable Care Act. It's unified, so why would protesters spend any energy on any member who's already committed to that? On Tuesday, a group of protesters in Maryland delivered Valentines to the office of Senator Benjamin Cardin, who was up for re-election in 2018, with questions about why he was agreeing to meet with Gorsuch after many Republicans refused to meet with blocked Obama nominee Merrick Garland. They handed out candy hearts with slogans like "Filibuster me" and "Be my accountable Democrat," and a sign that read, "Roses are red, violets are blue, supporting Trump's cabinet picks makes you guilty too." So, this is the most absurd thing I've ever heard. Joe Manchin is someone who is the one Democrat who voted to approve Jeff Sessions as Attorney General. Jeff Sessions is a longtime racist. Republicans thought he was too racist in the Reagan era. Yet, a Democrat, a so-called Democrat, voted to approve Jeff Sessions, someone who's against civil rights, as Attorney General. And do you want to know what else Joe Manchin did along with Heidi Heitkamp? They voted to appoint Scott Pruitt to lead the EPA. Scott Pruitt is a climate denier. He's a climate change denier. He doesn't think global warming is actually occurring. And they said, yeah, I'm okay with him leading the EPA. And yet, Joe Manchin has the gall to ask Bernie Sanders, hey, Bernie, I love this enthusiasm, but can you get him to direct it towards the real enemy, Donald Trump? Well, I've got bad news for you, Joe Manchin. Bernie Sanders already came to your rescue. Bernie Sanders instructed Democrats how to not be corporatist. He led by example by not accepting campaign contributions from billionaires, unlike you, and you decided to not do that. You decided to not follow the lead of Bernie Sanders, and now you want to beg him to come to rescue you because of the shitty things that you did? Trump is definitely the enemy. I think that no progressive will deny that fact. But do you want to know who else is the enemy? The neoliberal corporatist Democrats that are so unpopular that their own base doesn't want to come out to support them. And this effectively led to Donald Trump being elected. So you are responsible for Donald Trump because you don't represent the voters. So voters aren't coming out to support you. So you're responsible for Trump. So you're also the enemy, buddy. And let me just tell you this, Joe Manchin. In 2018, your ass is gone. You will be primaried so quickly, and progressives from around the country, we're going to pour everything we can into the Justice Democrats campaign that's going to challenge you and beat you. So, this whole story, it's completely absurd, and it really does communicate to me that, my suspicions were correct. The Democratic Party, they're trying to exploit Bernie Sanders. They want to push him out front and get him to make the Democratic Party more popular, but they don't actually want to embrace what Bernie Sanders is saying. They want to do terrible things. They don't want to change anything. They just want to make it seem as though they're changing because they're, embracing Bernie Sanders in terms of letting him speak. But they want to do shitty things and then have Bernie Sanders defend them. You're missing the point. It's time for you to leave office.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.